Fighting games have a strange place in my heart. On the one hand, I love the idea of having a one-on-one competition where only individual skill matters. I like not having to worry about shitty teammates or the salt I feel when a bad enemy player gets carried by his teammates. It's all on my shoulders, which in theory should add a lot more legitimacy to defeat or victory. On the other hand, fighting games demand so much time and energy to actually play effectively. Not only that, but further knowledge of the game can change the very scope of it. The difference in game knowledge between somebody who's just throwing out the hardest hitting move they have and somebody who understands the frame data and the spacing of the game is so vast that these two people are essentially playing different games. This means that the barrier to entry for a fighting game is not only high, but fundamentally changes the game itself. Because you're interacting with it in such a completely different way, this can result in you devoting a bunch of time to a game and then realizing you don't actually like it. For someone like me who's very ADHD and has very little patience at all, it's usually pretty hard for me to get involved in any fighting game because I have to know matchups and frame data and combos, which at the end of the day just feels like homework to me. Which is why all the fighting games I've ever stuck with have had things that I can enjoy on a casual level, like a story mode or easy to learn fundamentals. That's why it's all the more perplexing that Street Fighter Third Strike is probably my favorite fighting game of all time. I don't have a very particularly strong bond with the Street Fighter games as a whole. I think 4 is a moderately fun game, 5 is a pretty big disappointment to me for a variety of different reasons, and I don't think there's anything I can say about 2 that hasn't already been said. For what it's worth, I actually did play a decent amount of Street Fighter Alpha 2 in high school, but it is a game I literally just remembered as of the time of writing the script. Honestly, my most positive experiences with the series is from everything around the mainline games, like Puzzle Fighter, the Vs. Capcom series, and the animated movies. What I'm getting at is that while I may like the series overall, I have no extreme attachment to it like I do other fighting games, such as Mortal Kombat or Soul Calibur. I just really like this specific entry in the series for reasons that are unique to it. To better structure my thoughts, I'm going to split this video up into segments. Each segment is going to talk about a specific category of design that I believe makes Third Strike so exceptional. Let's begin. Now, my dear viewer, it may come to your attention that this game has really good sprites. Which, yes, I agree the sprites are amazing, but it's not just the sprites themselves. It's the extra attention to detail. Just look at the way Ryu's clothes ripple as he bounces up and down, or the extra animation of Q wiping himself off after he parries an attack. All the animations are hypnotically beautiful and add personality to its characters. When someone throws out a Hadouken, the gi ripples backwards to enhance the feeling of power behind the attack. So not only does the extra detail add more character to the game, but it also makes the impact of attacks feel that much better. We'll dissect this more later on, but for now, I just want you to recognize how much love and care went into this art. Not to mention the gorgeous backgrounds that have never looked more stunning. And if I wasn't so focused on fighting for my life, I'd get lost just looking at them. This game has the best sprite work of any video game I have ever played, and it's simply breathtaking. So part of the history of this game is that it's the third release of Street Fighter 3. Part of the gimmick of that game was that it was supposed to introduce a whole new cast of characters, and a lot of old favorites are missing, such as Blanca, Dalsim, Sagat, and Bison. They're all gone. Instead, we have a diverse, but in my opinion, better roster of newcomers to pick from. With later installments, they did end up bringing back old faces, such as Akuma, Chun-Li, Ken, who I'm perfectly fine with sticking around because I think they're the cream of the crop of the original roster, but overall, I really do like these new characters, and I mostly prefer them to their Street Fighter 2 counterparts. Let's just look at some of these guys. Oro is a wise old martial arts master who is so strong he fights with one arm to avoid killing his opponents. 12 is a bioweapon made by the Illuminati. Necro is a prototype of that bioweapon, but he's also a crazy circus performer with a girlfriend and they sing together and it's cute. Alex is basically Rambo, but in Street Fighter, but he's also the main character of the game. Yeah, a goddamn grappler is the main character. Not Ryu, not Ken, but ya boy Alex.
I don't lose.
And yes, I'm such a massive nerd that I actually know Street Fighter lore. But I actually think it says a lot about this game that I went out of my way to learn the lore just because of how well they're presented in this particular entry in the franchise. Next, let's take a look at Makoto. Her hair is moving with her, the knees bend, the neck band flowing with her as she turns. This is just one taunt for one character and it's brimming with life. This is what I meant by we'll go into further detail. These characters have so much personality in such little animations. And one final note I'd like to add is Dudley entered a fighting tournament just to get his fucking car back. I kid you not. He's just trying to get his car. That is so cool. Oh my god. Third Strike has some of your typical Street Fighter mechanics. You got your 6 buttons, lights, mediums, and heavies, with a punch and a kick associated with each. You have meter and EX moves, but to switch it up, you now have 3 different super moves you can choose from. And it adds variety to the gameplay, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention that unfortunately, if you look at the game competitively, almost every character has a super that's just mechanically the best. And yeah, I could talk about how they're cool and combos and links and all that jazz, but let's talk about why we're really here. The big boy. The parry. In most fighting games, when holding the backwards direction, your character will block. However, in Third Strike, if you tap in the forward direction at the time of the attack, you'll take no chip damage and have the highest window of recovery. The parry mechanic allows for a ton of skill expression, the most notable example of this being the legendary Evo moment number 37, which, if you're not aware of, is an event at a tournament that helped revitalize the interest in the fighting game genre and competitive gaming as a whole. This moment was so impactful that it had a whole book written about it. This universal mechanic just adds such an extra level of style that I think other fighting games should take note of. Speaking of style, this game also has taunt kills. Have you ever wanted to kill a man with a taunt? Well, you're in luck, because a lot of the taunts actually do have hitboxes. As a matter of fact, a lot of taunts hold mechanical value in this game, such as Q's taunt, which increases his defense. Taunts aren't just in the game to BM, and I appreciate that, because it feels like they were trying to make sure everything had a use, and didn't just give you a useless "my parents never loved me" button. Matches are a lot more about spacing and footsies than in other games, but overall, I think it's your standard Street Fighter affair of easy to learn, hard to master. And I think parrying is the mechanic that makes the game so much more interesting than the rest. There are more knowledgeable people that could probably detail what makes the game function mechanically better than I ever could, but these are just the things that I like. I think sound design is important in any game, but especially in a fighting game where a large part of your enjoyment is contingent upon the act of hitting another guy feeling good. Third Strike accomplishes this very well, but even more so, everything feels good. Blocking feels good, the music is phenomenal, hell, the character select screen is fun. The simple act of moving your cursor feels satisfying. And when you finally hit the one you're gonna fight with, you're rewarded with the announcer hyping you up. As far as I'm concerned, it's one of those god-tier character select screens, like Marvel vs. Capcom 2. And I haven't even talked about the voice acting yet. Everyone went super in for this game. Every character has had a significant improvement to their voice since the last version of Street Fighter 3, Second Impact. It's pretty much just an objective upgrade in every way from the previous versions, and it's the reason why I like Third Strike so much more than the other versions of Street Fighter 3. The presentation is just a million times better. Sean is a whole point for me because he's probably my favorite Street Fighter character, despite the fact that he basically only appeared in one entry into the franchise and is a low tier character.
Who can say why your heart sighs as your love lies only time?
Sean is Ken's pseudo-apprentice. He's self-taught and views Ken as his idol, hoping one day to be as powerful as he is. Ken told him that he wouldn't train him until Sean defeated Ryu, which after many attempts ended up getting himself seriously injured. From a roster standpoint, he's basically the Dan Hibiki of the Street Fighter 3 series. But unlike Dan, Sean just isn't properly trained. Dan was trained by Gouken, Ryu and Ken's master. He had the opportunity to be good, he just sucks. Sean is just the ultimate underdog, and I think there's something really endearing about a character who's just trying his best, win or lose. In fact, one of his supers is essentially just a glorified EX fireball. To me, this is a very interesting way to convey, through gameplay alone, what other characters can do with less effort and more efficiency, Sean has to commit significantly more effort to accomplish. And I've always wanted to see what it would look like if Sean was ever properly trained and his full potential was ever reached. So thematically, I enjoy the character, but in terms of gameplay, I also think he's very, very fun. His moves hit really hard and they have a lot of flair, and you can kill people with your balls. My balls killed him. Speaking of which, I think this taunt actually adds an extra dimension to him that other Shotos aren't afforded. Ryu is just a straight up Japanese karate fight man. Ken is a cocky American. Akuma is... But Sean's basketball adds a level of autonomy that is not usually afforded to other fighting game characters, because it represents a hobby outside of just fighting. He's a character with hobbies, dreams, ambitions. Not to mention, you can do setups that I'm not nearly good enough to do, but you can also use it to chip people out. I like his design and I like his gameplay. Third Strike presents him better than any other game, despite how bad he is in it. I just like Sean. So something that's always bothered me about Street Fighter is the name, Street Fighter. Most characters in the series are not actually Street Fighters. A lot of them are martial artists or military or whatever Q is. And when I think of a street fight, these aren't exactly the images that come to mind. I mean, just look at the opening of Street Fighter 2. These characters, to my knowledge, are not playable in any game, but they look way more like a Street Fighter to me. Now, you know what title makes way more sense for this series? World Warrior! It's right there, and I don't know why they didn't use it. I mean, come on. It's a worldwide tournament where you highlight the people's nationality. You know what they do in Third Strike? They fight on the street! More so what I mean, though, is that it does have a very urban feel to it, with its soundtrack consisting of some hip-hop and rap, as well as jazz. It feels a lot more like two people that just showed up on the side of the street to duke it out. I think, given the namesake, that this is an appropriate thematic choice. To sum this all up, Third Strike is just one of those S-tier games that I will always find myself coming back to. Its presentation is spectacular, its mechanics are incredibly engaging, and the soundtrack has nothing but bangers. Even with the absolutely butchered port from the 30th anniversary game, I'm still in love with it. I just hope that we can get a port that had as much love and care as the Xbox 360 one later down the line. I really hope that more developers take inspiration from this classic. A game that had a more diverse roster of competitively viable characters with the same level of presentation is all I really want out of life. That's all for now. I'll talk to you guys next time.